If you're applying for an SBA 7A loan, collateral is going to be a much bigger issue than you probably thought. Hey, I'm Ray Drew, an actual SBA lender, and in this video, I'm going to explain the SBA's collateral requirements. And I would pay attention because the SBA may or may not require the lender to place a lien on your house. Depends on the situation, but there's a lot of misinformation out there on the web, so I would watch this until the end so that you don't get duped by your lender. And it's not like there's a bunch of folks out here on the internet purposely lying to you. I'm not saying that. A lot of them are just oversimplifying things and not telling the full story. But I will, because you're smart and you deserve to know. And I explain this to small business owners every day, and they get it. Now keep in mind, I'm just the messenger. The US Small Business Administration lays out the rules. I just follow them. Now you might say, that's a stupid rule. I agree, but those are the rules. Okay, so my specialty is SBA 7A loans, $350,000 to $5 million. So what I'm about to tell you applies to this program in this range. Under $350,000, there's different rules that apply, and there's also different programs, each with their own rules. But this is the main program. And the folks I work with are small business owners looking to buy real estate, buy out a partner, buy businesses, and expand. Now, the underlying guideline here is that if the loan has unsecured exposure and you have collateral that's available, you have to pledge it. The reasoning for this is that the US government wants to look out for the US taxpayer. They would say that the applicant should pledge all available collateral to minimize losses, which under this program, taxpayers are on the hook for. Now, we could get into how the fees generated by this program make it a zero subsidy program for the taxpayer, and how the government's printing a ton of money and running up massive deficits. Meanwhile, the small business owner is creating half the jobs in America, but that would be counterproductive. So let's get back to collateral. First things first, you look at the business to see what's available for collateral there. There may be some equipment owned by that business. Now, the first thing you need to understand is that the SBA requires the lender to apply certain discount rates to the different types of collateral. And each lender sets their own discount rate, which is written in stone at the bank. You can't change it on a one-off deal. For example, the SBA allows up to an 80% discount rate for equipment. So if you have $100,000 of equipment, we're going to use $80,000. But most banks actually take a more conservative approach, especially if it's used equipment, which I've often seen discounted to 50% of its value. And the value of the equipment can be determined in multiple ways. You can use the net book value, which is found on the balance sheet, and it's often as low as zero because of depreciation. And you could also get an equipment appraisal, but unless the business isn't really asset heavy, it's typically not worth it. Then you look at assets like accounts receivable and inventory, and the discount rates we have to apply to that are pretty extreme, so those don't really move the needle in terms of collateral. So as you can see, in most of these cases, the business assets are not going to fully secure the loan. So in that case, the lender must seek additional collateral if it's available. And they're going to be looking at anyone who's a guarantor on the loan. And guarantors are folks that own 20% or more of the business. Okay, so what do we mean by all available collateral? This is key because this is how some of the banks will get you. We're talking real estate here. There are lenders that will look at your brokerage count, but that's on them. If they're calling that an SBA rule, that's a stretch. And I've seen that before. But again, I think that's more of their bank making up that rule. Now, sometimes the bank will need to get crafty in order to get your deal approved and maybe use some of that liquid collateral to mitigate a weakness, for example. But other times, it's the bank having what I call sticky fingers, and they're just trying to further protect the bank. And you can go along with it, or you can look elsewhere. It's a free market. So now we're down to real estate. So if you own a property with 25% or more equity in it, that's what we're looking at. And the value can come from Zillow, it can come from a recent appraisal, a new appraisal, the purchase price if it was a recent purchase. It's going to vary depending on the lender. I've worked at lenders where they'll use Zillow, and I worked at lenders that require an appraisal that was done in the last 12 months. Now, some lenders will put a lien on the house even if there's less than 25% equity in it. And that's an important distinction because that's not an SBA requirement. That's the bank wanting to put a lien on your house out of an abundance of caution. And you see this all the time. And if you have a difficult loan request, I wouldn't make a huge deal over it. But if you're a strong borrower, you shouldn't have to do that. Now, once all available collateral has been pledged or the loan is fully secured, whichever comes first, the lender has complied with the SBA collateral guidelines and can check the box. Now let's say it's the former, and you've pledged all available collateral, but there isn't much. I mean, let's go extreme. Let's say you're seeking a $4 million loan and there's only $200,000 of collateral. Then it's up to the lender to decide if they want to do that loan, because there is risk involved for the lender. The SBA only guarantees 75% of the loan. And the honest truth is, the vast majority of SBA lenders do not want to do that loan. But there are a pool of lenders that will consider it, assuming that the lack of collateral is the only other issue and everything else makes sense. Here's another tip. Let's say you're using the SBA 7A loan to buy a commercial property for your business. Because the SBA offers such high leverage, the small business owner will likely have to pledge additional collateral in those cases too, even though there's commercial real estate collateral available. So with real estate, the SBA allows the lender to discount to 85%, a little bit higher. So any financing beyond 85% loan to value on the commercial real estate will require additional collateral to be sought after. So what does all of this mean? Additional collateral is almost always required on an SBA 7A loan unless you have personal real estate with less than 25% equity in it. Then there's no collateral available. But most small business owners own a house, maybe a rental property with equity, and they're gonna have to pledge those properties as collateral on most of these SBA 7A loan requests. And while the 7A loan may be your best and sometimes only financing option available, this could be problematic for some people. I've seen spouses adamant about not wanting to pledge that house just because of the psychological aspect of it. And also, what if there's two partners and one owns a house and one doesn't? Is that fair? I've done loans for people with 10 properties that they had to pledge as collateral. And I've done that same loan for someone who didn't own any real estate, because many SBA lenders like myself don't really care about collateral. We care about the SBA guarantee and cash flow. Now, I will say this. SBA loans are usually 10 to 25 years. So chances are at some point during the SBA loan term, you're gonna want to sell that property that you pledged as collateral. So what do? Well, I will say that it's possible and it happens all the time, but you're gonna wanna speak to your lender first and understand their process for releasing collateral. And get it in writing, preferably from their servicing department, because the folks that you're speaking to on the front end aren't always the same folks you're speaking to on the back end after your loan closes. They may require the lien to be transferred to a new property that you're buying, or the proceeds be put into a CD and they'll collateralize that, or they may require a pay down or a partial pay down, or they may require nothing at all. It all depends on that specific scenario. And again, I've heard brokers and even some loan officers make it sound way too easy on the front end just to get the deal closed. And that's what I want you to look out for and avoid. So take notice, stay vigilant, and just work with an expert. So there you have it. If you found that video helpful and you want more insider tips from an actual SBA lender, go ahead and click that subscribe button, because I've got plenty more where that came from.